New footage of Britney Spears has once again become the center of public attention, reigniting an emotional storm that highlights just how invested the world still is in her story. Because while some might see a simple video clip of a pop star captured in an unguarded moment, millions of her supporters interpret it as a glimpse into a much deeper struggle that has defined her life for over 2 decades. And the reactions have been explosive across all social media platforms, with hashtags like #ProtectBritney, #Britney Spears, and #We Love You. Britney trending worldwide as fans analyze every movement, every pause, every flicker of expression in the video that seems to suggest something is not quite right. A sense that the freedom she was supposed to have gained after the end of her conservatorship might not be the complete liberation that was promised, and instead what we are witnessing could be the lingering scars of years of control, trauma, and relentless pressure. To understand why this new footage has caused such an uproar, one has to look back at Britney's history, the rise and fall that played out in real time before the eyes of millions, beginning with her meteoric ascent as a child star on the Mickey Mouse Club, her transformation into a global pop icon with the release of Baby One More Time, and her reign throughout the early 2000s as one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, selling out arenas, topping charts, and shaping an entire generation's idea of pop music. But behind the glitz and glamour, there were always cracks in the foundation, moments when the demands of fame clashed with her humanity, moments when the carefully manufactured image of the perfect pop princess could not mask the exhaustion, isolation, and vulnerability of a young woman whose every move was commodified, and by the mid-2000s those cracks widened into a public breakdown that became tabloid fodder for years, with paparazzi chasing her every step, media outlets ridiculing her pain, and late-night hosts turning her mental health struggles into punchlines, until ultimately the conservatorship was established in 2008, a legal arrangement that stripped Britney of the autonomy that most adults take for granted, and placed her life, career, and finances under the control of her father, Jamie Spears, and a team of court-approved conservators. And while at first this may have seemed like a protective measure to outsiders, over time it became increasingly clear that the conservatorship was a cage, one that kept Britney working, touring, recording, and performing against her will, even as she pleaded for her freedom. A reality that sparked the grassroots Free Britney movement, led by fans who refused to ignore the signs that something was deeply wrong. And by the late 2000s and 10s, this movement had become a global force that pressured the media, the courts, and the entertainment industry to pay attention, culminating in explosive documentaries that exposed the dark side of her conservatorship, and Britney herself finally speaking out in 2021 with heart-wrenching testimony about the abuse, control, and exploitation she endured, testimony that shocked the world and led to the legal termination of the conservatorship, a moment that was celebrated as a hard-won victory for freedom and justice. Yet even in that moment of triumph, many fans remained cautious, aware that healing from such trauma is not instantaneous, and that the scars of 13 years of legal imprisonment would not simply vanish overnight. And that brings us to the present moment, to this new footage that has once again stirred concern, because while Britney posts often on Instagram where she dances, poses, and shares glimpses of her daily life, this particular clip feels different to her supporters, who claim her demeanor suggests distress rather than joy, who notice a disconnect in her eyes and gestures, who wonder aloud if she is truly surrounded by people who love and protect her, or if there are still unseen forces exerting control. And this is why the internet is ablaze with theories, ranging from those who believe Britney is fine and simply eccentric in the way she expresses herself, to those who fear she is still being manipulated, monitored, or coerced, and others who speculate that years of emotional trauma have left lasting impacts on her mental health that cannot be ignored, all of which raises the fundamental question: is Britney Spears safe, happy, and genuinely free? The footage alone cannot answer that question definitively, but what it does reveal is the depth of the emotional connection fans feel toward her, because Britney has come to symbolize more than a celebrity. She represents the fight for autonomy, the dangers of unchecked legal power, and the resilience of a woman who endured one of the most public struggles in entertainment history. And so when her supporters see even a hint of pain, fear, or instability. They react with alarm because they know too well the cost of ignoring warning signs. They know too well that this is a woman who was silenced and exploited for over a decade, and they refuse to sit quietly if history seems to be repeating itself, which is why every new clip, every update, every candid moment of Britney Spears is not just entertainment, but rather a cultural flashpoint, a reminder of how fragile freedom can be, and how essential it is to protect those who have been failed before, and until Britney herself can live fully and openly without the shadows of her past looming so heavily over her present. Every piece of footage will continue to spark this cycle of worry, debate, and devotion from the millions of people who simply want to see her safe, healthy, and truly in control of her own destiny.